So you thought I'd never finish. We're back at it, comparing the conferences. We've looked at the Big Ten, the SEC, and the ACC. We took a long break because we really didn't take a break. We looked at National Signing Day and all the recruiting, over 35 videos there. Now we're back at comparing the conferences. Let's get to the Big 12. We're going to knock out the Pac-12. Then we're going to put together a composite video to compare the conferences. But let's run down the wins and the losses. So what we're doing here, if you haven't checked out the other videos, is we're looking at the games played between the Power 5 conferences. So throw out the conference standings because, of course, those games are played within the conferences. You can only truly compare the conferences by looking at the games played against one another. And, of course, some conferences played better against the FBS, and some conferences had some very lousy games and some embarrassing losses against the MAC or the Sun Belt. But we're throwing those games out as well because what we're looking at here is a closed environment, closed experiment, just games within the Power 5 against each other. So for the Big 12, because there are less teams in the Big 12, just 10 in the Big 12, than the other conferences, you're automatically going to have less games played. So the Big 10, you had like 28 games played. The SEC, you had like 22 games played. The ACC, 26 games. Just 18 games played for the Big 12. So this is regular season and postseason. Big 12 against the other four major conferences. So we look at the wins. So in the 6 Big 12 wins, those 6 Big 12 teams went 38-29. Their opponents that they defeated went 47-33. Or you could look at it this way. Those 6 opponents went 47-27 other than those 6 losses. So those Big 12 teams in conference went 30-24, and they beat teams that went 25-24 in their conferences. So that's a really good number there to compare how good were these teams in the Big 12 versus how highly rated and ranked and seeded were those teams in the other conferences. So this is what it comes out to. That the average seeding in the Big 12 for those 6 wins was 6.3. So about the 6th best team in the Big 12, and this was adjusted to seeding against 6.7. So roughly the competition was just about even, 6.3 versus 6.7. So let's run down those games real quick. TCU, we rated them the 2nd seed. Of course, they lost to Baylor head-to-head. The 2nd seed in the Big 12, they defeated Minnesota. Oklahoma, a 4 seed over a SEC 10 seed. And then what we did was adjust the Big 12 seeds, because if you haven't watched the other videos, we've got 14 teams in the SEC, the Big 10, and the ACC. We've got 12 in the Pac-12. We've got 10 in the Big 12. So, for example, if you finished 6th in the Big 12, you're halfway down the conference rankings. If you finished 7th in the Big 10, the ACC, or the SEC, that's the same. You're 7 out of 14 teams. So we had to adjust the seeding for the number of teams in the conference. So again, TCU, a 2 or a 3 against Minnesota. They won that game. Minnesota, the 4th seed in the Big 10. Oklahoma beat Tennessee. West Virginia over Maryland. Good win for the Big 12 there, as the adjusted 8th seed in the Big 12 defeated Maryland, a 6th seed in the Big 10. Oklahoma State, good win for the Big 12 in the bowl game against Washington, a 9 seed over an 8 seed. The Iowa State-Iowa game, big win for the Cyclones in the Big 12 here, because you consider last place team in the Big 12 defeated 7th place team in the Big 10. And then you have the TCU win over Ole Miss in the Chick-fil-A Bowl. So in those games, again, 6.3 average seed for the Big 12, 6.7 for their competition. Okay, the 12 losses. The Big 12 teams went 83-71 or 83-59 in all the other games against some pretty good football teams. 113-45 was the composite record of the teams that the Big 12 lost to in those 12 games. Big 12 conference record, so those 12 teams that lost those games went 59-49 in the Big 12, so they were better than average in the Big 12. And they lost to teams that went 59-33 in their conference. So the average seeding in the Big 12, as you might expect, lower seeded teams are typically going to lose to higher seeded teams. So the average seeding for the Big 12 here at 7.2, losing to an average seed outside of the conference at 5.1. But again, so that's understandable. A 7 seed, average 7 seed, losing to an average 5 seed. But consider they lost all 12 games. So I don't think this is going to shake out too well for the Big 12. The numbers don't look horrible here, but consider they went 6-12. So we're going to have to multiply all this out by 6 wins and 12 losses. So we've got the quality of win, and we've got the average quality of loss for the Big 12. And this is how we add this up. We gave 10 points for a win. We subtracted 10 points for a loss. And then we looked at seeding, and we tweaked it from there. So, for example, if a first-place team in a conference defeats a first-place team in another conference, that's a 10-point win. So when Ohio State defeated Oregon in the national championship game, the Big Ten got 10 points. The Pac-12 lost 10 points. Okay? That was a 10-point loss, a negative 10 for the Pac-12. But if you adjust for seeding, for example, we'll take a couple extreme cases here. Iowa State over Iowa. Low seed in the Big 12 defeating a higher seed in the Big 10. That's a plus 14. That's 10 points for the Big 12 plus the 4 seed difference that you give the Big 12. So that's a plus 14 for the Big 12, a negative 14 for the Big 10. On the other hand, TCU being the second place team in the Big 12, defeating a fifth place team in the SEC, Ole Miss in the Chick-fil-A Bowl, that's just a plus 6. So the average quality win for the Big 12, decent at 9.7, but they slightly were defeating lesser teams, lesser seeds in other conferences, or that would have been 10 if it was dead even. Quality of loss, negative 7.9. So that speaks well for the Big 12. They were losing to better teams, but again, they did it 12 consecutive times. So there it is for the Big 12. And again, this will mean so much more when we knock out the Pac-12, then we put it all together and compare the conferences. Would love to hear what you have to say. Give us your thoughts on our system and on the Big 12 versus the ACC, the Big 10, the SEC, and the Pac-12. Right here on Mark Rogers TV.